Welcome to Growthcast, Insights for B2B leaders, where we uncover the strategies, stories, and solutions driving growth for B2B leaders. I'm your host, Alex, and in each episode, we'll dive deep with founders, CEOs, and industry experts to explore how to scale, innovate, and lead in today's competitive environment. So let's get into today's episode where we have Tova. Really nice to have you today. How are you?
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
No worries at all. Pleasure to have you. Do you mind doing a brief introduction for our audience so they can get to know you a bit better?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, my name is Tovah Paglaro. I'm one of the co-founders of Fathom. We have sort of best-in-class text analytics that empowers researchers, market research agencies, customer insights teams to really understand their audiences with nuance, depth, and detail in their own words. And I kind of have a sort of a funny journey getting to this place. I never saw myself as being a technologist or an entrepreneur. That word is still uncomfortable for me. My background is really in story and strategy and just really driven by a desire to help people better understand each other, make more informed decisions, and really sort of break down silos, division, all of those sorts of things that make it difficult for us to get to good outcomes, whether it's in business, whether it's in politics, whether it's in sort of social spaces. And so I've worked across all of those spaces on different kinds of solutions in order to sort of center an understanding, a more empathetic and human understanding of people in decision making.
Yeah, definitely, man. Can you dive a bit more into how you got to this position before? What was you doing before this? I know it's a relatively new company, so how did
It
you get?
is, yeah. We've been around just over a year, and so yeah, sure. I'll go if I go way back. My degrees are actually in film and in business, and I was a film producer and a TV exec for sort of the first half of my career. I love that work. I love story. I believe in the power of story and believe it's really beautiful and powerful in order to help us understand each other. It's a kind of decision making, a kind of understanding that is unparalleled, I think. And also, I became a mother and I had some kids, and my husband and I were both in the film industry. And that wasn't the way that I wanted to be raising our kids. I wanted to be more present, sort of in the stages when they were a bit younger. And so we made the decision that one of us needed to leave the industry and pursue something else. And I was in a really fortunate position to have a lot of transferable skills and was able to kind of explore and see, okay, well, where else can I apply story and strategy in work that feels meaningful and aligned for me, and sort of serves my purpose, and discovered the nonprofit space. So I ended up actually spending the next decade or so in the campaign space, where the intersection of story and strategy leads to outcomes in the world. And I was like, well, this is very, very exciting. We put together these skills and then good things happen in the world. And so led some really, really wonderful and impactful projects there, really exploring the space of behavioral economics. How do we understand people and then use like behavioral science in order to drive action? Loved that work, found it really, really fulfilling. And also, the more time I spent in that space, the more I started to be concerned about externalities. Okay, so we're really good at winning, but what is happening when we're communicating in these ways? What other kinds of impacts are happening? And this was kind of around the same time as we were all maybe having the beginning of consciousness raising around siloed communications and polarization and all of these sorts of things. And I was really starting to get pretty concerned about how we might be contributing to that inadvertently through some of the work that we were doing. And so I wanted to start to take a more systems approach. How do we measure the whole system? How do we think in an entire system in narrative theory, in driving forward narratives to lead to good social outcomes? That led to a couple of years in a social innovation and social entrepreneurship hub in a university as their general manager. At that point, I had three young kids under the age of 11. I really wanted to go back to school and do a master's, but I was a single mom with three kids at home. And so, again, sort of leaning into transferable skills, I was able to join that team as the GM and really support them in scaling. They were a small team, a new innovation hub in a university. I spent the next couple of years working there, taking that team from 4 to about maybe 25-ish when I left, and got to soak up essentially systems theory and a master's in social innovation. And while I was there, my now founding partner and I started to do what you do in the early, really, really early stages of a company, where you kind of build it off the side of your desk and you start to duct tape together some things and you come up with some hypotheses and you start to test some of those hypotheses. And what we were really playing with was, how do we take the principles that we know work around communication based on behavioral economics, and how would we scale those while also having more visibility into the whole system in order to be able to ensure that those communications were resonating and leading to the positive outcomes, while minimizing blowback and downside and all of the challenges around polarization and siloed communication. So that turned into our first company together, which was called Avalanche Insights, and specialized in open-ended listening at scale. Really large samples, think 10,000 people, lots of open ends, maybe half of a survey in open ends, and making sense of all of that language, primarily in really complex topic areas. So we were working in civic change, we were working in politics, we were working with really values-aligned companies to navigate complex change. Love that work. And also, we tried all of the sort of tools that existed to be able to make sense of that language. And we found that none of them worked well enough. So we started building our own tools in-house, our own text analytics tools for our own team. We built that company to be really pretty successful, and it was acquired about a year and a half ago. And part of that, we can talk more about this, was realizing that we had accidentally built two companies by that point. We had built this really successful agency that was doing incredible work, and it was a research agency, and it needed all of the things that an agency needs, a service business needs. And we'd built a technology company that was building this really cool and powerful technology, and it needed all of the things that a technology company needs. And that means that they need different operating sort of systems, they need different financial structures, they need different incentive structures. You can do that, I think, really well, maybe at a company that's like, 200 people or more and has a component that is service or a component that is tech. But it's really, really hard to be a team of about 50 and be half and half. And that's where we were at. And so we decided, okay, cool, we need to focus. We need to prioritize. We need to pick one of these things and be really, really good at that and let go of the other thing. And so the agency was acquired, and we took a step back and did what you do when you're starting to build a new product, and talked to everybody we could around, okay, how could we make this product as useful and as valuable for you as a researcher as it could possibly be. Went into a bit of redesign and then launched that almost 18 months ago now as Fathom. So now it's a SaaS-based subscription platform for other researchers to use to be able to get the same kinds of outcomes as we were getting. And of course, it's gotten better since when we were using it. So a more powerful tool than when we were using it in-house.
Of course, no, definitely. That's a really interesting path you've taken. So from film to being a GM to now founding two companies, an agency and now a SaaS. It's
Yeah,
probably quite a lot of growth that you've experienced over those years. What
yeah,
would you say
absolutely.
was one consistent challenge that across all careers it stayed the same, no matter whether you be a founder or an employee or a GM?
Yeah. So many challenges that remain the same. Um, I think for me personally, like my biggest challenge, and I think like for most of us, our biggest challenges are also our superpowers. They're like the two
Yeah.
sides of the same coin. And so for me, it is almost always the flip side of prioritization and being able to do a lot. I kind of think of myself as a specialist, as a generalist. Like I'm very good at being able to jump in and solve new problems. And that's what you need to do as a founder, is really, really quickly get as good as you possibly can at a thing, be able to solve the next problem that you didn't know to see coming, do everything you can to plan, but then pivot really quickly. All of that is really comfortable for me, but maybe sometimes too comfortable for me. And so the flip side of that is really being able to prioritize and focus. And that's something that I've certainly been working on forever, and continue to work on. But I think one of the things that, as I've also gotten older and spent more time in the space, and just, as you sort of settle into yourself through all of those experiences, is that I've also come to realize that I am at my best when I'm stretched a little bit thin, when I'm like actually kind of pulled in multiple directions, and when different parts of my brain are engaged on different problems. So for me, it's always finding that balance between prioritization, which is absolutely key. Dropping the balls that are, plastic and can bounce when there's too many balls in the air, but also making sure there's enough balls in the air that I'm sort of really energetically engaged and pushing myself really, really hard. And that's the sweet spot for me.
Yeah, no, definitely. And of course, now focusing a bit more and now at times with Fathom, it's been over a year in the close to 18 months.
Yeah.
Of course, you've grown the business.
Mhm.
What was being your key focus areas in terms of growing it? Was it customer acquisition or is it more perfecting the product so it kind of sells itself, or maybe both?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think I remember when I'll answer your question by taking a story, sort of a sideways in story. So I remember when we first applied as Avalanche to Higher Ground Labs, and we were like, here's our product. And the team was like, wow, you guys are super interesting and you're thinking about this in interesting ways. And we're excited about getting behind this. And also, you don't have a product. And I was like, what do you mean we don't have a product? Look at this methodology for understanding people. And they were like, mm-hmm. And we have come so far since then in understanding what a product is and what makes a good product. And I tell that story because I think the biggest sort of part of our journey over the last year has been refining product market fit, and it continues to be. And I now have a much, much deeper understanding of how much time that takes and how complex that is and what the signals are and what those iterative loops of learning look like. So, in answer to your question, then it's about the intersection of those two things. It's about better understanding what really matters to the segment of people for whom Fathom is the perfect solution. People who are really valuing super, super high quality text analytics, really rigorous analytics, a deep understanding of their people, for whom like good enough understanding isn't good enough. They really want to be able to go much deeper than that. And want to be able to really trust the solution, and that's not the right solution for everybody. And so, gaining comfort in that, who are those people? How do we identify those people? How do we build for those people? And then ensuring that our solution then really meets the needs of that audience. So, it needs to be incredibly secure. It needs to be SOC 2 compliant and certified, and all of those pieces. It needs to be really easy in terms of upload and export. The analytics need to be intuitive and delightful. The interface needs to be, really intuitive and delightful. It needs to allow a huge amount of customization and control because that's what really matters to really rigorous researchers. So it's really been sort of the intersection of those two things. I think, like any new company, you start broad and you're like, well, we could help all of these people. And then you start to really understand, okay, who are the people who really value what you are building, which needs to be the intersection of what you believe in. We believe in quality research. We believe in rigorous research. We believe in story and understanding people through open ends and being the place where you're able to do that best. And where there's like value in the market and somebody actually wants to pay for that solution. And that dance, I think, has been the last year. And I think we're at a place now after a year that we understand that. And now it's really sort of about adding fire to that and scaling it.
Of course, no, definitely. That's a really interesting approach and great story that you've taken there. And of course, you found that product fit now, you're close to it. There's
Mm,
always development
there's
and
always more. Yeah.
but in that regard, of course, during this time, how do you stay competitive within the market, right? There's so many SaaS solutions. Everyone's selling a SaaS these days. What's making you stand out in the market when you're going to all these potential clients or prospects?
Yeah, we've been so lucky. A big part of it for us is being able to lean into our background. My co-founder and I are both researchers, and we built a solution that works for researchers.
Yeah.
And so that feels pretty intuitive when we're in that space. A lot of, the sort of the little things and the features are like, yep, that's exactly how we need it. And we know that because we come from that space. And so we've really built a solution that is value first. And yeah, it's powered by a ton of AI and a ton of data science. And we have incredible people on our team who are powering that, but it's driven by value first. What is the value that we are unlocking? How are we making your life better? How are we making your life easier? How are we unlocking new insights that drive value for the business? Okay, cool. We're doing that with fancy tech. We can talk about that later. But that's, I think, been key to success for us is even in the midst of the AI hype cycle, really not leaning into our AI as our selling feature and instead really focusing on the value. How are we delivering value and unlocking value so that you can do better work?
Definitely, definitely. And you mentioned AI, which we'll touch on in a second,
Yeah.
but there's a key theme here in terms of you're working really closely with your co-founder, which is great.
Yeah.
And a lot of businesses start off as co-founders, of course, but there's typically an area where one disagrees with the other and they branch off. What do you
Yeah.
think led to you guys being successful with Avalanche firstly, but now he's doing it with Fathom again? Is there
Yes.
a synergy there where one completes the other? What's your approach in being a successful partnership?
I think a big part of it is that we both really believe in productive conflict. So that thing that you just said about where like somebody disagrees about a thing and then somebody else is leaning to us, we're like, oh, cool, that means something. Let's lean in. Let's talk through what that means because we both really, really respect and value the other person. And so if we're disagreeing on something fundamental to the business and we stay really aligned on our core strategy, then that means that there's some complexity there that we should be leaning into and better understanding in order to get to whatever the solution is that we haven't found yet. So I think that is probably the short version of the answer. I have a much longer version about like finding somebody with complementary skill sets and enough of an overlap and all of those sorts of pieces. But I think that the core piece is a shared belief that the other person is brilliant, which I absolutely believe my co-founder is brilliant, and I think he'd say the same thing about me. I feel pretty confident he would.
Okay.
And that we really value the complementary skill sets, which means that when we disagree, we slow down enough to understand what we disagree about and to get curious and to like really lean into that because we know that there's something good there in order to be able to move faster. And we haven't always got that right. We remind each other to
Yeah.
slow down to go fast, go slow to to go fast. Both of us sometimes would like to go faster to go fast.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a nice saying in business where speed always wins, but sometimes you need to control that speed to be successful in terms of longevity. So
Not if you're not aligned. Running off in different directions just breaks everything.
exactly, no, 100% completely agree. And now going back to that AI theme, of course,
Mm,
as its place, it's been the buzzword for 2 years since GPT came out. What are
yeah.
your thoughts on it? How are you implementing it into the business to be successful?
Yeah, I mean, we're an AI business, so that's sort of
Well,
foundational to us being successful. Um, Maybe more interesting is how we're seeing that shifting in the ecosystem sort of writ large. So I think we've gone through these like crazy cycles, as I think is the case anytime there's massive technological innovation that is causing a huge amount of disruption, which is sort of, I think, where we've been for the last 18 months. So, when we came into this space, when we sold Avalanche and launched Fathom, um, there was not a lot of awareness or understanding about like what AI was. And there was a lot of skepticism. Is AI going to take our jobs? Is it going to replace everything? And it was kind of combined with like really unfettered hope. So there was like this kind of crazy tension that was happening of like, I'm terrified that it's going to take my job and displace absolutely everything. And also, can it do everything that I magically want it to do with absolutely no supervision or control?
yeah,
And the reality is that it isn't either of those things, of course. So we came through a period of just like a lot of sort of hesitation and curiosity. At that same time, early in the buying cycle, nobody really knew how they were buying AI. They didn't know what their infosec processes looked like. They didn't know what decision making looked like within an organization. Navigating that meant a ton of learning for us and a ton of learning for them and lots of back and forth. It was just a lot of uncertainty. Then we start to find that's like kind of solidified. Some of those processes came into play both for us and for organizations. It was clear how decision making was happening when AI was a core piece of the product. And at the same time, we had sort of AI hype. Everybody wanted to explore everything that was AI just for the sake of AI. And so it was like, let's trial absolutely everything. Let's go through a ton of experimentation. We found lots of companies trying a bunch of different tools. And now we've come back to a place where I feel like people's feet are on the ground. Okay, cool. We have processes in place. We are anchoring on value. Does this solution add value? How does this solution align with my tech stack and work with our needs? How is it fitting into sort of budgets and workflows and tech stacks and all of those pieces? And people's feet are like back on the ground. And again, really anchored on value, on business value, and I think also on like human value. One of the things that was maybe surprising for us over the last year and a learning for us was that obviously we were selling primarily based on business value. Here's the insight that it's going to unlock. Here's the time that it's going to save for you. Here's the time you're going to get back to be able to put into more strategic work, all of those really, really key things. And those are still there. But one of the things that we found we were hearing back from our customers a ton was that it was also increasing morale within the company. So you got to stop doing this part of the work that was horrible and unlock this part of the work that was the most fun. And now your analysts on your team are like energized and excited and able to dive into, and it's not just that they're being more strategic and putting their time into the best parts of their work, it's also that you've removed a ton of brain drain from a thing that was really monotonous and tedious and not that much fun, and help them focus on the things that are like innovative and creative and fun. And it's unlocking all kinds of creativity and new products and new ways of doing work. And so I think that's actually where we're at, like in the AI cycle now, is this combination of feet on the ground. It's all about value, and it needs to be like tangible. And we are making decisions about where there's the most value and how to put it together in ways that make sense. Plus, what's it unlocking that we didn't even know to look for yet? What's more than time savings? Just time savings isn't good enough. What else are we doing? How is it making our lives better, our team happier, unlocking new innovation and creativity through the adoption of tools that have AI capacity in them?
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a really interesting approach that you guys are taking, especially considering the cycle, of course. I remember
Yeah,
when it first came out, people would just write emails with AI and they don't know what else to do. And now it's
right.
starting to come onto the websites, replacing jobs already, and that's only the start, right? In the next few years, I'm really excited to see where it goes from there. And then, of course, AI is a massive trend for 2025. What
Yep,
other trends are you seeing for 2025 that aren't as AI focused? Of course, your AI companies, I'm sure that's a big focus for you guys. But what's some of
definitely
the
is.
other trends that you're spotting, especially research companies? Are they trying to utilize AI more to make it faster to develop the research for their clients? What are you
Yeah.
seeing?
Yeah. Well, I think so. Maybe I'll answer. I heard two questions there. How are research companies sort of using AI and other trends within the space? And what does that look like for 2025? And then what do we see like more broadly in 2025? So within the research space in particular, and I think, I've seen lots of really smart people writing lots of good things about this. So I'm sure this won't be comprehensive, and there's lots more out there. In the AI space in particular, we're really seeing a lean into the two things that we just talked about, like how are we consolidating? How does this fit within our tech stack? Business value, no longer sort of AI hype, but how is this actually solving real problems and delivering new value for us as a business? And human in the loop. So, like, we are a human in the loop company. We absolutely believe in human supervision and human control over everything that is happening. And I think, 9 months ago, even, we were still having conversations where we were sort of trying to explain to people why. And now people have had enough experiences with things like getting a Dolly image that is like 75% great, but then when you try and get the LLM to like fix that last 25%, you just like can't. That it's like really intuitive why you need human control, human supervision, and ultimately like the ability for humans to really intervene in the process and oversee every piece of that. People like deeply understand it. Now they've had enough experience. And so I see more and more folks going in that direction. And certainly we feel it in our sales cycle, where increasingly that is seen as an asset or even a necessity. So sort of that, I think, in the sort of AI and market research space more broadly, I think data quality is going to continue to be like the biggest sort of challenge, and like everything else, that continues to move. As synthetic data presents some options, and bots that can now do even more in an AI enabled way, present other challenges, and everybody is sort of playing a responsive game to all of that. We see that less in our space because what we're doing is so anchored in open-ended data, and because that is certainly possible to have some of those challenges, but much harder. And so we actually see less of that in our space than in some spaces. But I think those are the big places that we're going to continue to see a lot of energy in the industry is going to be around, data, the fraud, the synthetic data, and how do we use synthetic data, and then the new innovation and creativity that is possible, what becomes possible as we start to build from a foundation of AI is a thing, as opposed to how might we use AI. And certainly we're seeing that already, some of the ways that folks are incorporating the data that they process through Fathom, once they've got that binary coded data in place, and once they are able to do sort of more rigorous statistical testing on top of that, that means that they can start to do drivers analysis and persona creation and all sorts of things that they just like literally couldn't do before based on open-ended data. So I think we're moving to a space of like creativity, and productization of that creativity, as opposed to sort of experimentation and how might we.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's AI is very specific, and you need to know what kind of prompts to give it
Mm.
to get what you need out of it, right? You can have a very basic prompt and it'll give you something very basic, as opposed to if you have a very detailed prompt, where I'm seeing now there's 10-page prompts just to give out one specific
Yeah.
answer, right? I think there's more of an evolution towards that now, where people
Yeah.
start to understand and actually utilize it as a tool, like you mentioned.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And I think we'll see more products like Fathom, not necessarily sort of in the same space, where you understand how prompting works, but it's no longer your responsibility to do all of that work. It's been productized. And so you can use a product where you get to upload your data, provide in normal language some information about what you want to have happen with it, and then be able to interact with that. And I think we'll see more and more folks kind of moving in that direction. Yeah.
Definitely. And probably a question I should have asked at the start, but why is the business called Fathom?
Why is it called Fathom? Because if you lean into open-ended data and analyze that with curiosity, you can see possibilities you didn't even know to look for. And when you do that, you can fathom something that you couldn't fathom previously.
Yeah, no, definitely. I really like that answer. And it's in its name, right? It's self-explanatory to a degree, but I like it's nice and simple, does what it says in the tin, and
It's
that's
pretty much
it.
exactly it. Yeah.
Great. And I know at the start, like you mentioned, you have a family, you've got 3 children.
Yeah.
Sounds like they've been a staple across your whole life, across
Yeah.
every business adventure you've done. Have you managed to balance that work-life balance? Of course, being a business owner is stressful. I can say that personally, and I know you can say that
Yeah.
too. How do you balance it in terms of still having a life with the kids and the family, and then also running a successful business?
Balancing essentially parental responsibilities and being a founder because both are incredibly demanding jobs that could be full-time things. And I think for me, that's not really any different than any other working parent, which means that you need to decide what your priorities are and then align your sort of life, your purpose, the structure of your life around those things. I was incredibly lucky to have a ton of energy as a parent because I had my kids really young. And so I have never not had that. It's always been there for me, and that presents its own challenges. I graduated with a 4-month-old on my hip and carried him across the stage with me. My kids were on set with me, tied on in slings when I was, working in film. They have been there every step of the way. They were there when we founded the company. They were there when we sold the company. They have been there and woven into the fabric of my life as a founder every step of the way. And so we've kind of had the opportunity to build systems and structures, or I have prioritized building systems and structures that work for that. That means that I will often do things like work from 5 until 7 a.m. and then be offline from 7 until 9:30 a.m. to get the kids to school. And then I'll come off, working online, and then I will come off at 2:30 or 3 in order to be able to do after school things with activities and food and all of those kinds of things. And then I'll get back online at like 9 after the kids go to bed and work until midnight. Um, that might sound sort of crazy to some folks. To me, that sounds like the flexibility to be able to be my best self at work and to be able to give everything I want to as a founder and to the work that I believe in, and to show up the way that I want to show up for my kids, being a really present parent, being, on the sidelines at sports games, helping with homework, cooking the meals with them, all of those sorts of things. And as they've turned into teenagers, my kids are all teens now, it's really shifted. So now that means that they step up more. When I need to work a 14-hour day, which happens from time to time as a founder, I'm sure
Yeah.
they are responsible for meals. They can step up and step into some of those things as that gets older. But it certainly isn't always easy. But I think we all get to choose what our not easy is. Nothing's easy, so we just get to choose which challenges we value enough to take on.
Yeah, definitely. I think you've approached that in a very healthy way as well, especially being a founder, having that flexibility to be like, yeah, I'll take 9 to 11 off to do the school run or whatever, then pick
Yeah.
them up. It's a lot better than being stuck in a job where you don't have flexibility at all. And now post-COVID, maybe there's a bit more since the work from home came out, but especially before that, only founders could be that flexible, but also grind the 14-hour days when they need to. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think COVID has really changed things. I remember pre-COVID really needing to hide the kids. hide how much I was, being a parent while I was also working. And I have plenty of stories of doing that. I remember one call that I had with I won't say who, but like a very well-known, high-profile type team with like a lot on the line, and our babysitter got sick and wasn't there, and I had three kids, and my oldest at the time was grade 2, so I guess Asher was like 7. And I was like, okay, I need 30 minutes to brief this team, and it cannot go bad, and there cannot be kids screaming in the background. So I put one kid in the back of the bike and the other one on the trailer bike, and the 7-year-old riding their own bike. And I briefed one of the like highest level teams you could possibly imagine while riding my bike around and around the block, because that would keep the kids quiet. And that was what was necessary then. Now, post COVID, I'd be like, my babysitter, it didn't show up today, and there's kids in the background. Really sorry if they intervene, and you would just move through that. You wouldn't need to hide it the same way, but you still did, a decade ago.
How did you explain on the brief that you're on a bike?
I didn't. I told them I was, between meetings, and that they might hear some commuting noise, but that I was moving from one thing to another.
So it wasn't on camera, it was just audio.
Mm-mm. No, no, this was like a decade ago, so it was still perfectly acceptable to
Oh,
be on
okay.
camera,
Oh, amazing, amazing. That's lucky then. That's really good.
right? But it's different now. You don't need to do that the
Yeah, I
same
suppose
way.
I mean you'd be surprised there's so many dogs and cats in people's backgrounds now when they
Exactly.
there's
Yeah.
nothing there anymore. Like everyone works from home, so that's always good.
Everyone works from home, and I think we're much more comfortable being like our whole human self, and also being like, and I'm showing up, doing good work.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we shouldn't hide being parents or pet owners or anything like that. Everyone has something to do.
No, absolutely not. But certainly at that point, as a sort of early 30s woman and parent and a mom, yeah, that's not how you showed up at work back then. Even
Definitely.
a
I
decade ago.
imagine
Lots
it.
changed in
I
a
can still
decade.
imagine it's taboo now these days, but it's a lot more accepted.
Yeah.
But, and just to end off the podcast, if you could leave one message or piece of advice for our audience growing their business, what would that be?
Mm. I think my piece of advice would be to seek as much advice and input as you possibly can, and incorporate it into your own thinking, and also to trust that you know your business and your market and sort of your unique position within that better than anybody else.
Yeah,
So incorporate all of it, seek it out, hear it all, really, really consider it, and like internalize as much as you can, and then trust that you just need to move through the process and
yeah,
make some mistakes and learn, but that process of learning and knowing is core to you knowing your business, your offering, your unique skill set, and how you will win in the market.
yeah, definitely. I think that's a great way to end the podcast off. And where can our audience find you if they want to hear more from yourself or be in contact?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can find me personally on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to chat. I think I mentioned to you before we hopped on that I hold Friday afternoons for like peer-to-peer coaching and network support and those sorts of things. I really enjoy being in community with folks, so happy to chat. And then absolutely please check out Fathom. And you can find that at fathomthat.ai.
Definitely. I'll also include that in the description so people can go there straight away. But
Perfect.
thanks so much for being a guest on today's episode, Tova. Hopefully we can have you as a part two soon in a few months' time. And thank for everyone for listening and see you next time. Thank you.